Hi, my name is Ruijia, and this is my presentation regarding 2 out of 3 of my teaching principles, and also a brief preview of a model lesson plan that demonstrates these principles. Many international students that are admitted to American education programs struggle with learning at the upper levels because they are not prepared for the difficulties and learning obstacles of studying and learning from academic English texts in their college courses. Most of the content at college level are formal and professional in nature, so ELLs often become shocked when they begin teaching philosophy into 3 principles. But I will just present 2 of them in this presentation. Principle number 1 is to build all of my students' strategic competence as learners and promote learner autonomy. Principle number 2 is to generate, sustain, and protect learner motivation. In this past semester, I tutored a sophomore university-level international student on academic English, focusing mostly reading comprehension of academic texts. The class that I want to teach and will base this lesson plan on is English for academic purposes, specifically reading and study skills. The course readings, class observations, and tutoring opportunities that I did this semester have helped refine my teaching philosophy into 3 principles, but I'll just present 2 of them in this presentation. Principle number 1 is to build all of my students' strategic competence as learners and promote learner autonomy. Principle number 2 is to generate, sustain, and protect learner motivation. My first teaching principle revolves around building strategic competence and promoting learner autonomy. This principle is drawn from many other concepts such as communicative language teaching, communicative competence, strategic competence, linguistic and discourse competence, reading comprehension strategies, SQ4R, and cognitive and metacognitive strategies. My first principle of my teaching philosophy concentrates on building the student's strategic competence for reading comprehension of difficult texts and also strategic competence for studying and learning in general. Strategic competence is defined as the ability to manage the direction of one's own process of learning or using a new language. This concept is drawn from communicative language teaching. Using Him's idea of communicative competence, strategic competence for my classroom's purposes for reading comprehension refers to the learner's knowledge of how to plan for reading or learning, compensate for comprehension or learning deficits, repair comprehension or learning breakdowns, elicit input. My definition is also informed by Presley, who stated that strategic competence relies on automatic word-level skills to help decode text efficiently, appropriate prior knowledge to help fill in gaps and free memory space, and involves the use of a variety of other comprehension or learning strategies to strengthen the understanding of texts. Editors' criticism of the standard way academic reading comprehension is taught in second language schools resonated with me. Editor states that most teachers think of reading comprehension strategies as those procedures, actions, techniques, or behaviors that a learner selects and uses in order to enhance their comprehension or their learning from what they read. After reading and thinking deeply about his criticism against this way of thinking about reading comprehension and strategic competence, like editor, I began to plan my teaching approaches according to Presley's understanding that reading comprehension strategies is a list of processes required to get done with a reading task efficiently, and that learning to use strategies is not a mechanical sequencing of process, but a flexible, constructive execution of the processes. I began my first tutoring session teaching the SQ4R method and emphasized it as an effective system. But after that first session with my TUT and after I worked on my own academic assignments for my graduate program, I realized that the SQ4R method is ideal for some situations and top excessive of an approach for other contexts. Therefore, in my second and third tutoring sessions, I emphasized to my TUT the importance of flexibly applying cognitive and metacognitive strategies I had taught my students within the SQ4R system, but to always be aware that the different purposes for reading requires totally different approaches. My second principle is to generate, sustain, and protect learner motivation. This principle takes inspiration from drawing on what we know about the benefits of lesson warm-up, error and correction feedback, and interaction patterns, wait time, use of visuals, modeling, bridging, contextualizing, building schema, representing text, and developing metacognition. Creating strategic competence and learner autonomy depends on having enough high level of motivation to apply the comprehension strategies in the first place. Without motivation, a student can be a floating fish outside of water. Motivation is nourishment for the brain and soul, and that is why I have made the second main principle of my teaching philosophy to revolve around motivation. Motivation is important to me because it instills in learners a spread of persistence, resilience, and confidence in face of any difficulties and setbacks. This is very important in reading comprehension of academic English because oftentimes articles and chapters will need to be read several times before understanding. In the context of learning English as a second or foreign language, it refers to why students decide to learn, how long they're willing to sustain the activity, and how hard they're going to work at it. Kind of like the examples Prabhu gave. High motivation is so important for learning academic English because students often will get intimidated or fatigued from too much studying of academic texts. Following Doré, I define motivation as an interplay of cognitive and emotional factors that make up a motivational conglomerate. The four strategies I will use are lesson warm-up, error and correction feedback, and interaction patterns, wait time, and use of visuals. Here's one benefit of each of these strategies. Lesson warm-up introduce the objectives of the lesson and set expectations so that the students feel like they're able to predict what will happen next as they go through each part and feel like they're grounded in the process. Error and correction feedback and interaction patterns that are ideal can create basic motivation conditions in the classroom by fostering a pleasant and supportive learning environment. Wait time, when used, correctly sustain and protect motivation by giving students a sufficient amount of time to ponder over what was asked. Use of visuals can stimulate multiple senses, and teachers almost unanimously acknowledge the benefits of a good graphic organizer. My model lesson plan that will demonstrate my teaching philosophy will be an EAP reading comprehension and discourse competence lesson. At the end of the lesson, students will be able to speak out major discourse concepts and organizational patterns and read academic text strategically in part by using their knowledge of discourse, organizational patterns, and discourse markers.